We're back in the Old Town to talk about Harpers Ferry's role in the Industrial Revolution. We know that George Washington visited Harpers Ferry many times, but he made a very serious visit in 1785 to look at Harpers Ferry as a potential site for a federal armory. And finally, in 1795, the armory was established and a large factory was built just a few hundred yards from here along the Potomac River. Now, Harpers Ferry at that time became the kind of Silicon Valley of its day. We're going to go inside the museum to see some of the machines that were used, which at that time was cutting-edge technology. We've come inside the Industry Museum in the Old Town of Harpers Ferry to look at some of the machines that were actually used in the manufacture of rifles and other armaments. Harpers Ferry was right at the cutting edge of manufacturing in its day. The manufacture of interchangeable parts first took place here in Harpers Ferry. It was the process that made it possible to mass manufacture not only armaments, but of course anything, including automobiles ultimately. And so Harpers Ferry was right at the heart of an important development in the Industrial Revolution. Well, we're here at the Harpers Ferry Historical National Park, which is a great American resource, historical and as a site of great scenic beauty. We're looking out at the convergence of the Potomac River on the left and the Shenandoah River on the right. The Potomac River goes another 60 miles down to Washington and ultimately to the Chesapeake Bay. This is where two competing technologies came to a head, and it is something that is also a lesson for how technologies leap over each other. The Cno Canal began first, but was soon followed, almost parallel in many locations, by the railroad, the B&O Railroad. Now, George Washington had a real obsession about harnessing the Potomac River as a means of opening up the Great West. And so he started out with an aborted attempt close to where the city of Washington now is. But that was succeeded by the actual building of the Cno Canal. The canal was built starting back in the 1820s. And today, of course, it's grown over and there is no water left in the canal itself. But we do have the towpath, which was used by animals to pull the narrow boats along. And this serves as a great recreational resource. But the canal boats that went along the canal had to get beyond the barrier of about 200 feet difference in elevation between Washington and Harpers Ferry. So there were over 90 locks where the canal boats would have to be lifted up to be able to get up or down to Washington or points north. Well, why did the canal not continue to function? Very simply, it's because of the railroad. The railroad was built starting in about 1840, right next to the canal. The train was obviously more efficient and much faster than the canal boats. And so the train took over as the means of transportation through the gap here in Harpers Ferry to points west and north.